Hi, and welcome to our webinar today on how events are not major gifts. My name is Jeff Schreifels, and I'm a senior partner at Veritus Group. I've been working in the nonprofit sector for over 30 years and have worked as a development director for several nonprofits. In my career, I've had the opportunity to work with nonprofits to build strategic and meaningful fundraising and marketing programs. I've also been able to deep dive into the data of hundreds of nonprofits to really see and understand the problems many organizations are facing. I'm excited to be with you today. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that we've been talking about for years, but continues to be a challenge for nonprofits, and that's how many nonprofits approach events. We strongly believe that events are hurting many nonprofits by causing silos, reducing donor giving, and limiting the potential for an authentic relationship. So today, we'll be talking about the true costs of events and what role they should play in your fundraising strategy. We'll also touch on how you can actually leverage events in beneficial ways and how to overcome some potential barriers that may come up as you shift your approach to events. The first thing I want to make clear is that our perspective is that events are a marketing and public relations function. We need to rethink what we see as the role of events because events are not philanthropy and they're not major gifts. If that's how your organization sees events, then there's an imbalance that needs to be addressed. We work with so many fundraisers, leaders, and nonprofit staff who are convinced that events are a vital part of their fundraising strategy. But the reality is very different. Often, events actually take away resources and time that could be used to build meaningful donor relationships and create opportunities for the donor to give to her capacity. This is because there's a pretty pervasive misperception that events are major gifts when they actually are a marketing tool. And what all of this does is makes us lose sight of the donor's passion, interests, and desire to make an impact. As you start to analyze your events to uncover where you might be misaligned in your approach to events, there are some questions you can start asking to begin conversations internally. First, you need to really look at how much net revenue the event actually brings in. That means actually taking into account the cost of everything, including staff time. Staff time is critical to include because events do take valuable time and effort away from your staff, so that costs need to be included to get a real sense of the revenue of the event. Once you've done that, evaluate the metrics. Could you get a higher ROI and net revenue by investing that time and those resources into your major gift program? The answer is yes, but seeing the numbers can help you make a stronger case for shifting this investment. And lastly, it's important to have an honest conversation about what purpose this event actually serves. Why did you start it in the first place? Answering this can sometimes help you identify where things get out of alignment. Ultimately, our view is that events serve a limited role for your nonprofit, and they should never replace actually developing relationships with your donors. When you focus on relationships, you'll see much greater connection to the mission, commitment to the organization, and overall giving. Now, we've worked with enough fundraisers to see countless situations where MGOs get pulled away from their caseload to be somehow involved in an event. And we want that to stop because it's hurting your nonprofit to put an MGO in charge of an event. The only role an MGO should have in the event is to connect with their donors in a meaningful and strategic way. That also means that MGOs should not be involved in any kind of prospecting or donor acquisition efforts happening at your event. This all boils down again to rewiring what we think of as the purpose of an event. Not everyone who attends is going to be a donor, and not everyone who gives at an event is really going to care deeply about your program. So let's talk about how you can actually leverage events. Now, to be clear, we're not entirely anti-event. We do see that they can serve a purpose. We've also already mentioned, we believe that events can provide a valuable marketing function to build awareness about your organization and the work you're doing. In this way, they can also act as a donor acquisition tool. Events can also be a great cultivation tool that is part of your overall communication strategy with your major donors. They should take on a very limited role in what you do with your donor and should only be part of your strategy if the event is aligned with the donor's interest. One thing events can do exceptionally well is really strengthen the underlying support of your community for your cause. They are a great opportunity to share your story, highlight the need, and present the solution, and show the impact your donors, program staff, and community are already making. There are three main ways that we believe events can be used to support your fundraising efforts, especially with mid, major, and planned giving donors. Deepening the relationship is likely the main way that you'll use an event with your donors. It can give you an opportunity to engage with the donor in person or provide the donor with new ways to connect with your organization. In more unique situations, you may use it as a cultivation tool as you prepare to ask the donor for a gift. Remember here, it's critical to keep the donor's passion and interests in mind. If you have an event that's all about your tree planting program, but your donor is particularly interested in environmental advocacy, then that event is not likely going to serve as a good cultivation tool. And lastly, it's really about how you emotionally connect your donors to the mission. While the numbers are important, being deeply connected to the problem you are working to solve can have a huge impact on your donor. We'd be remiss if we didn't address some of the potential barriers and resistance that you may experience as you shift your event's approach. Many nonprofit leaders and staff have long-standing beliefs around events that may need to be addressed and worked through. But we encourage you to have an open, respectful conversation to walk through whatever might be coming up so that there's a collective understanding of why this change is happening. Probably the first thing you'll hear about reducing or changing your approach to events is all about the revenue. Events can seem like a giant revenue generator, and while some might be for a small percentage of organizations, once you start really considering the cost, ROI, and net revenue implications for other fundraising work, it becomes clear that you would actually gain more revenue by keeping your fundraisers focused on their donors. This is another one that comes up a lot. You might have some donors who specifically give at events or who wait for your gala every year. Unfortunately, most of these donors are probably not committed to your mission as much as they are to the event. While you should ideally look for ways to strategically move these donors toward mission giving, you can consider having these donors serve as the underwriters for the event. The reality is that not everyone who attends your event will become a donor. Events can serve an acquisition function, and you may want to ask your major donors to invite people they think would be interested in what you could do with the event. But remember, acquisition typically has a 0.05 to 1 ROI, meaning you're going to lose money at the point of acquisition. And it takes a lot of work to retain that donor, so set the right expectations for what kind of conversation you'll get from the event. This really drives Richard and me crazy. It's really important here to be asking that question of, what is the actual purpose of the event? You may need to recruit support from leadership, your CEO, or your board chair to more clearly outline the purpose of your board. Well, that wraps up our conversation today on how events are not major gifts. Thank you all for joining me for this important conversation. I hope this has provided a useful foundation as you begin to shift your approach to events at your organization. If you aren't already, be sure you follow our blog and podcast to hear more about the Veritus Group. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.